Hi. So, I hadn't been planning on doing one of these for over the holiday weekend. Um, and to be honest, these topics that we're in right now, which is the third hub as we're moving out, like we're at the end of the themes. This is the last theme that's in chapter 6. And next we move into interruptions and stressors. So these are it's kind of a combination right now. These are really strong topics to be like talking through. And and this is a time right now, and I think the thing that moved me to come on and just do this is just a way of wanting to show up right now where there's just and it's this is about like third hub, but just that there's really a lot of collective sadness right now. Yeah. Yeah, and I think some yeah, I don't know if I want to get too much into this, but there's loss that's being felt. Um and so I think one of the important things to me with this, and I'm kind of struggling to find the words right now, but I'll get there eventually. Or I aspire to. Um, is it's about the thing about showing up the best that with what's the best of what's available, and and it's not necessarily the showing like the quality and how articulate or energized or even how insightful or intelligent or even present um, that we can be. It's just that we show up. We show up because it's like what we have in the moment. And I think that's one of the things that is a very third hub notion is that perfectionism interferes with the third hub, the ability to do, to execute, to show up, to be who we are. A tremendous interference with that is the idea that that needs to, it's like showing up the best you can be. And I think that gets contorted into being showing up like close to perfect, where really it's about just showing up and giving what you have that you have to give. And that's something I think for this work that this takes a lot out of me. And so for me, even, it's like in showing up and being kind of like in a state right now where I'm not wasn't really fully planning on doing one of these, that it's just that the awareness of that and the calling to feeling like, okay, with what I have, I just kind of, like the idea is I just want to show up. I want to show up right now. And, and I think one of the things is like most, there's nobody watching this as I'm recording it. And, um, and people watch this, weeks, months, in some cases later than when I originally recorded it. But I have faith that it reaches that it connects when it connects. So when it's the right time. So anyway, so maybe this is like for a future thing, but I feel like I want to just show up right now in a very third hub way, which is showing up and not, yeah, I feel moved to. So, but also I want to acknowledge that. doing this, um, takes a really particular kind of energy that I need to restore in myself. And yeah. Yeah, it is. So we're going to do a little bit of reading here. And this is an interesting one for kind of, today as and I'm just going chronologically, or is it chronologically, pageologically, numerically? So it's chronos time. And we're at power, masculine and feminine. And I'm going to start reading on it, and I'm going to talk to it like, as if you've watched any of these previous installments, you may have seen me talk about something and then I read it and it's like restated. So there's that. So anyway, so I'm going to start reading, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who is following along and reading. Comments and messages and interaction with likes and subscribing is really encouraged. Ultimately, there's I want this to reach the people who need it, because I mean the thing is, like, I wrote this because I needed it, you know. And I also had a very keen sense that this was something that was going to be needed beyond me. Otherwise, I would not have published it into a book. So there's that. Okay. So power, masculine and feminine. And if it's not in here, I'm going to talk about sort of the arrival of this. I can't remember. Okay. So contemporary corporate warriors' bookshelves usually have a copy of Sun Tzu's ancient pillar of strategic wisdom, The Art of War, written 500 years before the birth of Christ. Before becoming a general and a preeminent military strategist, Sun was a Taoist farmer. His insights, which remain potent and profound to this day, came from observing the rhythms, patterns, and power of nature. Business consultant Chin Ning Chu explained in The Art of War for Women that Sun wrote his 13-chapter treatise to get a military job, making it quite possibly the most effective job application in history. A familiar Taoist symbol is the black and white swirls of the yin and yang, which each swirl contains a small circle of the opposite color, an enduring representation of paradox and ambiguity. Nothing is entirely black or entirely white, and there is no absolute in anything natural, including the notion of gender. Jung described the animus as the unconscious masculine side of a woman and the anima as the unconscious feminine side of a man, like the opposing dots within the larger yin-yang swirls. Consider a football team often viewed as a pinnacle of masculinity, yet it balances both anima and animus. The cohesiveness of the team, how players work together, the preparation of attending to details, and the big picture strategy incorporates the yin, feminine energy principles, along with the yang of masculine energy principles in the focused execution in each play as the ball advances down the field. Yeah, I think one of the enduring nature of The Art of War, 25,000 years, no, 2,500 years, 25. Yeah, it's 2,500 years. And still, well, it's actually now 270, 2,000. Yeah, okay, we're good. But the enduring nature and how it is so recognizable across cultures and time really speaks to, or kind of harks back to the fact that it was written by a farmer who observed the rhythms of nature, because it wasn't so because Sun Tzu, when he wrote it, he wasn't like, so as stated here, he wrote it before he was a military strategist. So something to consider there. So feminine force is distributed energy, a unified field within all matter that's like energetic glue. It holds the universe together. Masculine force is the focused, directed energy of specific intention, causation, and traction, a laser like action that drives things forward without excessive consideration for far reaching consequences. Masculine energy tends to win the battle but lose the war, and feminine energy tends to lack focus in individual battles but win the larger war. Consideration of long term consequences tends to fare well in retrospect. Alone, each of these energies has considerable strengths and definite limits. Together, they're formidable. This balancing is nuanced with dynamic complexities that are like the rhythms in nature, complexity that gets reduced to binary gender roles and heterosexual relationships, when instead of two singular expressions, the possibilities are actually infinite. Yeah, I mean, this is a larger topic, and I think that let's see where I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about so where I started initially to really take note of the different contributions within developing a cohesive organization. It was seeing that, that like sort of more masculine energy was more bullish and like made very transactional moves to really advance in a very like succinct, direct way the mission, and that there was what was more of like a feminine energy, which was longer term thinking, the consideration of like the more far reaching implications for making a direct move, and that both men and women have both of these things in different ratios. And I think by turning male energy and female energy, or yin and yang, or anima, like actually, I'm not going to use anima, but this idea that a man is all male energy and a woman is all female energy is something that can only live in an abstract, undefined notion of what either of those things are. Because as soon as either of them is defined, it becomes really difficult to make the case for anybody that can exist in the world that and who lives solely as masculine energy, and for anyone to succeed in the world who is only masculine energy. Um, and even like what though each of those things are. So the purpose in this work to define this is really about acknowledging that there's been a tremendous amount of co-opting very feminine qualities at like without specifically naming them as being masculine, but like a rebranding that anything that makes people successful is masculine energy, conventionally successful, and anything that makes people, like doing societally, you know, downgraded tasks, such as things that have to do with tending to a home or raising children, as being, like less valuable. But ultimately, and that's a whole other thing, which is totally ridiculous, but I mean, this is the larger discussion than this format allows. But I will say that in a professional environment, I think that there's a tremendous amount of value put on the very specific transactional moves where it's like it's like I do this, I get that. Contracts are written in this language. A lot of what's apparent and what folks focus on is, in terms of progressing a deal or advancing a project or, achieving goals is the notion of this very like the most obtuse aspect of it. And I think that one of the things that happens with people who have a more sort of feminine power is the strength of the power to understand how things relate to each other. It's like, look, when we pull this pin, this person's going to react that way. And when they react that way, it's going to cause this, which is going to make this person act this way. And then as a result, we're going to have to handle this. And that's going to like impact our next move. That kind of stuff is very feminine, as outlined here, and so, and it's brilliant. It's brilliance in deals. It's brilliance um, in the achievement of extraordinary things. And I think that one of the things, I've seen happen is people that particular aspect of power is not, almost invisibled and not valued. And it takes a lot of energy to uphold, to deliver on, to consider. And then there are folks who are, it's like the transactional move is the one that it's kind of like it's like like a football team. It's the person who scored. It's like the person who scored, and there's an entire team. There's an entire strategy. There's an understanding of the other organization. When we move this way, they're going to move that way, so we want to move that way so that we're ready for them. That thinking ahead, thinking about the entire field of play. Yeah, and I mean, I think one of the things very early in my career is that I saw folks, and this is both, male and female. So this is actually we're gonna talk a little bit about gender here, but um having tremendous like going into crisis for their contributions being significant and undervalued, and them understanding what they had done in terms of strategy, what they had done in terms of their big picture thinking, being able to control against risks, being able to, corral a deal or an organization or progress, and have the person who scored be considered the hero when they know that they were like the defense or whatever. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so in Parinama practice, the foundation of gender identity first emerges in the individuation and personal power of the third hub. Social identity in the fourth hub will influence the expression of gender identity as it continues to blossom and evolve as we ascend the hubs. But under the strain of certain social influences, being shamed or disdained, it can also become part of the hidden self. Most of us learn gender as a set of socially prescribed roles and behaviors. Gender identity can be confused and conflated with these roles and social behaviors, but gender has ephemeral connections to our inner being and aspects of ourselves that transcend social roles and functions. Flowers have genders and express them in all manner of pollination and self-expression. Many iconic flowers, roses, tulips, daffodils, lilies, are intersex, containing both male and female organs. Pumpkins, mangoes, and almost half the animal kingdom are intersex, including clownfish, red kangaroos, and hyenas. There's awe in, oh, let's see, just a moment. There is awe in a flower expressing itself wherever and whenever it grows and blossoms. If a sunflower grows in a rose garden, would we call it a rose? Seems like right now we might. Oh, okay. So transgender activist Janet Mock's first memoir, Redefining Realness, states gender and gender identity, sex and sexuality are spheres of self-discovery that overlap and relate, but are not the same. Every one of us has a sexual orientation and a gender identity. Simply put, our sexual orientation has to do with whom we get into bed with, while our gender identity has to do with whom we get into bed as. Some parents fear teasing and harsh judgment of their children outside the home and rationalize their own harshness in the home as preparation for the so called real world. But we'll never find bullies that hurt us worse than the ones in our own families. The delicate and small body, the psyche, and the soul of a child at any stage of early development just wants to be loved and accepted. In some families, the same parents who claim that the death of their child would destroy them impose a death by exile or denial of existence in a child born a sunflower in a rose garden over their beliefs or fear of embarrassment. Gender identity is part of early third hub development. It's part of authentic self expression. And although gender identity is often conflated with sexual orientation, they're two separate but related elements of the human experience, with sexuality as the domain of the second and fourth hub that come later in life along with maturation. As in nature, the evidence of masculine and feminine are always in complementary and dynamic flow everywhere we look, if we can see it. Some examples of yang, male energy, and yin, female energy, is male yang transactional, quantitative, and measurable. Examples are tactile, focuses intensity on completing tasks, loses the big picture, focuses on rules and specifics of contract language, the letter of the law, organized, consolidates and simplifies, starts with a historical or current situation and looks forward. Female, yin, relational, quantitative, and abstract is strategic, focuses on the big picture, focuses on intent and contract language, the spirit of the law, able to multitask, expands and distributes, reverse engineers, starts with how things should be, then envisions the creation of an ideal future state. If you feel like you can relate to both, that's normal. We all contain dynamics from both yin and yang. Oh, that's a spell. I found a typo. Yin. It's yin. From yin and yang energetic qualities. That's funny. Somebody found another one. So there's two, which is pretty good. I'm pretty proud of that. Actually, there's got to be some typos in here. Can't be too perfect. That would be ridiculous. So yeah, This was this was a really hard topic to write on for me. It felt really loaded, and it still does. It abuts two topics that professional organizations ask me to speak about. And it's interesting that this is something I think that would, that is currently very activating for people, for some folks, and especially in the kind of public discourse. And I think the importance of this is that we all contain these qualities to greater or lesser extents. I mean, and then there's also the matter of what we're socialized to emphasize, and I think that one of the things that, like the notion that, masculine energy is very direct and even unfeeling, which I think that's a socialized notion. I don't think that's like something that's real. I mean, when I was writing the book, there were like folks doing actual carpentry, masonry folks, gardeners, all men who were working outside my window and throughout the time, throughout the years of writing. And I'd listen to them talking. And these are, like guys who, work with their hands, like landscapers and like definitely like, you know, like yeah, like cursing and stuff but most of what they talk about were people. They talk about how people treated them. Listen to them all day, and they talk about how people treat them. Um, like how like what people had said to them, and just and the people in their lives, what was happening with them. Talk about people. Talk about it'd be like things that had honestly, like I know it's like I don't mean to demean it, but like it hurt their feelings. So, they'd be saying like this person, like she said this to me, but like she'd already said, like for clients, and and it's like the other thing like the thing about men with their feelings, like men have feelings. Like it's not masculine to not have feelings. It's socialized masculine to not have feelings. Men have feelings, like strong men, men who are hyper transactional, men who are all of these very masculine things. It's just because it's not masculine or feminine to be having emotion, like to be reacting to the things that are happening to you in your life is not female. It's literally like that's just like literally you like just being an alive human being. And I think that men really suffer for this because there's first of all, not being taught like the low value of this, like where like emotional literacy not being emphasized in the raising of a child, and in many cases being maybe shamed or undermined, like if because I think boys, there's a lot of literature on this where boys a lot earlier, and even at this stage in the third hub as toddlers and young children, when they have when they show a lot of emotion, that they get shamed for it. And it's like, you're a big boy, that you should be able to handle this. You're too old for this. Like if a kid is crying or having a reaction or their feelings are hurt, that's it's really subtle but effective, taught that like needs to be reined in, whereas like a little girl might be allowed to cry a bit more, and it's kind of like, oh, look, she's being a little girl about stuff. But I mean, even as a boss, I will say that I think one of the reasons that I think I've arguably been had more success as a boss of men is relates probably to allowing space for like letting like kind of feeling and emotion exist without it being like perceived as a weak quality. It's like, and also anger is an emotion, is feeling, and and that's when you get a lot of frustration and anger. That is an emotion. But yeah, that men have feelings, and that the trade-off of having to suppress those feelings, to like feel less masculine. So it's like either be authentically yourself or be something that feels like it's like a reduction in power and dignity and virality, like, being virile, that it's like that would be the trade-off, is that, so it's kind of like, well, my trade-off is I can either, like kind of uphold this notion of myself as being strong, or I can have an emotional life. That's like, it's like I guess like a Sophie's choice. Is that what that I don't know what that expression is, kind of thing. Yeah, and women have the kind of, the flip on that, which is that, a lot of the, like, what's considered to be like social female power is antithetical to like conventional power. So it's being small, it's being cute, it's being desirable, it's being, kind of like non-threatening, and for me, one like strong, it was just, or maybe it's strong because I've talked about it, was my experience when I became a leader, which was that, I remember I was like still like a young woman, and socially, you see it still, that socially it's a lot of like societal power can come from validation, and that validation for women comes from qualities that are like charming and cute and pretty, all these things. And so as a leader, one of the things is those are not qualities of someone who's leading, unless it's like kind of become, like you need to be direct with people. And also it's very, like folks will really figure out pretty quickly that they can overpower you if it's very clear to them what you need to be, like the idea that you need to be, they know, like that they can like actually like hold it hostage. They'll try, if they're like, um, if being feminine, you know, um, is important to you. Um, you know, so that I remember as a real crossroads for me, which was, well, how do I lead men who are older than me, more senior than me? I mean, I guess senior and older. Um, yeah, and maintain my femininity, which, like my desirability, really, my desirability. How would I maintain those two things simultaneously? And that walk of finding that involved finding a voice, which is an ongoing process. I can't say that as soon as that, kind of crossroads emerged, that immediately, I mean, I understood what road I needed to take, in order um, to grow as a leader. But even the process of finding my voice led into writing the book, which, my author, Allison, my editor rather, had really called out and coached me and sherped me through one of the manifestations in this, which was that I was writing with multiple citations. So in a passage like what I just read, you would typically see a lot of like multiple citations from multiple different types of sources. And I mean, this even has a little bit of that, but so I think it might be a good example of this. And I remember like one of her points on this is that as the author, that my position on it could stand on its own, without having to call in all these other people to validate it. So that's something too, as far as having a standalone voice and finding that it's like to realize like me saying it in, in the context of this book, like this is it's enough. It's enough. Like that can stand on its own. Yeah. And also that it was, kind of, it read a little bit as a notion about like defending myself. And I used to say like, "Oh, well, I'm like getting ready to fight." It's actually more I was getting ready to like to fight in defense of myself. So I was like preparing to for a world that was going to meet me in opposition or hostility, and that was a big realization for me. So, I mean, I don't know, I really this is another thing where I'd love to have this be a discussion and be talking to somebody about this because I'm very interested in hearing how other people have traversed this and having more conversations. Yes, I mean, I do have conversations about this professionally. It's a topic, but I will also say that it is a thing. Like this was one of the more taboo sections to write, or as I wrote it, I felt nervous at times. Even reading it, I had a little bit of it. I had a little bit of like, oof, this is, yeah. Mhm. Yeah. And I think that the position on it is really like one of folks being able to be more fully themselves and just really trying to continue to open that aperture to be able to begin to explore that aspect of being able to be like a fully like strong, like as a man, to be fully strong, to be like to be powerful, to be everything, to be more of what you want to be. Because when the emotions are suppressed, it really takes energy to hold something back. It makes you afraid of something within yourself. Like if there's something that, if there's something about yourself that you feel you need to be ashamed of, if there's something about yourself that you feel like you can't say, that is not powerful, and to actually to, like, harbor that is is antithetical to being powerful, and it takes energy to maintain, and that's something that's very parinama, which is that, and this is happening now, I'm hearing about this, I've been hearing, since the book's been out and as people have been practicing it, and not just and my own direct experience with this, is that you like when we only have a finite amount of energy. This might be something that even gloss over in class on this upcoming Thursday. You have a finite amount of energy, and so we are actually using it to hold adaptations up, to hold holding patterns. And when those open, when those disintegrate, they're not absorbing energy, so all of a sudden there's more capacity, and folks talk about this frequently, which is like immediate access to like thinking more clearly, more creativity, like stuff that's in the upper like hubs, upper registers, all of a sudden gets like a flow of greater of just yeah, more energy. So anyway, that was me showing up for today. So there's we got I hope, so this is a holiday weekend for me right now, and I hope wherever you are, wherever you are, that you're taking your time that you need, your time to restore yourself. Yeah. And just being, put just hand to heart, connecting with yourself. If you feel like you are not getting enough, if you feel you're giving too much, if you feel sad, that you allow yourself to have that and you don't second guess yourself. So, anyhow, with that, I'm going to ring my little bell here. Okay. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.